Welcome to the MindMill Podcast, where host Seth Marcus dissects and discusses all things impacting young adults. Peers, mentors, and professionals share intimate conversations on subjects such as entrepreneurship, exercise and health, music and art, the blessings and curses of technology, travel, and how to navigate adulthood in this age of information. We are the largest generation in history, and we dictate the future. The MindMill. Find your purpose, fuel your purpose.
The MindMill booklet has arrived. This back pocket notebook is designed to be your catch-all for daily life. For many of us, note-taking is an absolute free-for-all. An idea strikes us, our friend recommends a good book, we remember that bill is due tomorrow. What do? For most of my life, I was the quintessential random note-taker. I tried to jot things down on the back of receipts and keep notes in my phone. These habits left me disorganized and simply did not work. Without a system in place, we're doomed to continue scribbling on scraps, searching for random notes, and getting lost in our phones, letting our genius slowly slip away. It is for that exact reason that we created the MindMill booklet. It fits in your back pocket or purse and goes wherever you go. It's packed with templates and organization systems for productivity and clarity. Features in the booklet include dedicated areas for to-dos, categorized shopping lists, habit tracking, cash transactions, idea developments, AM and PM routines, and much, much more. This booklet is packed with useful and intuitive sections, easy navigation, inspiring art, and powerful quotes. While the MindMill booklet is incredibly easy to use, we've included a detailed instructive introduction to help guide beginners and experienced noters alike in maximizing their writing habits and overall productivity. The MindMill booklet is a game changer, consolidating your daily ideas and notes while limiting distraction, giving you much needed reprieve from your phone. Don't get us wrong, we aren't bashing technology. Tech is a wonderful tool and a crucial part of our society, but we see legions of distracted folks out there, and we're here to help the world reclaim their attention spans. The booklet provides tips on how to use it alongside your tech to maximize productivity and design for your most mindful life. With the MindMill booklet, there are no dings and alerts, just your thoughts ready to be captured and developed. So whether you're looking to optimize your productivity, build a writing practice, or just limit your screen time, the MindMill booklet is your best companion. Go to themindmill.com for more information, tutorials, example pages, one hell of a podcast, and much more. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the MindMill Podcast. I've been hesitant in releasing today's episode, not because I doubt its quality, quite the opposite, in fact. I was a bit uneasy to share this story with you because of its extremely personal and exposing nature. There are a handful of episodes that have never made it to the airwaves, and this one could have easily collected the metaphorical dust on my metaphorical shelf. However, in listening back to this episode, I'm reminded how impactful this event was on my life and how I still tap back into this experience for guidance and direction. Also, my episode cohort, Brian Tyree, has been on my case for months to release this. Today, I speak candidly on my own experiences with the psychedelic plant medicine ayahuasca. Specifically, this is a recollection of a recent 2-night ayahuasca ceremony I attended. Brian and I discuss how I prepare for these ceremonies, physically, mentally, and spiritually. I then attempt to discuss the events and experiences that absolutely changed my life over these 2 nights. I say attempt because psychedelic experiences are near impossible to describe in words. The word ineffable, defined as too great or extreme to be expressed or described in words, is the commonplace explanation for many of these experiences. With that disclaimer, I do my best to tell the story of what happened to me over those 2 nights. Ayahuasca is an illegal gray area here in the US, like many plants these days. I say this because it's important to understand the risks and responsibilities associated when considering taking ayahuasca. Plant medicines such as Aya have exploded in popularity over the past decade, and many people are rushing to experience them. There are some amazing resources out there, and I encourage you to use them. Be sure you are medically fit to ingest these substances and that you trust the integrity of the practitioners you consider. While my own experiences with psychedelics have been overwhelmingly positive, they have also been some of the scariest and most difficult moments in my life. This stuff is no joke. It's unlike anything you've likely experienced. When people ask me about ayahuasca, I like to say it's like having a backhoe in your garage. It's an incredibly powerful tool, but it can hurt you if you're not prepared to use it. Furthermore, it is still just a tool, not a cure-all. It requires the user to apply what they learn to their own lives. A couple side notes on this episode before we dive in. First, I preface the story as one of the 2 life-changing events that occurred in the fall of 2018. I do not touch on the other event in this episode, but it was the tragic breakup of my last band, Dark Arts. If you're interested, I highly recommend you go back and listen to the Story of Dark Arts episode. While you're there, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts because it's the best way to support the MindMill Podcast. I also recorded another podcast episode on ayahuasca. titled Before and After Ayahuasca with Chip Baker. Go back and check out that episode if you are curious and would like to learn more about plant medicines and first-time experiences. All right, my most vulnerable episode yet. You may leave this episode thinking I'm nuts, and that's a risk I'm willing to take. Ayahuasca has and continues to be an incredible tool for me. It has given me insights on life and clarity beyond my comprehension. Some have described a psychedelic experience to be, quote, 10 years of therapy in one night. While I have not undergone 10 years of therapy to compare, this story provides a small glimpse as to the power of this medicine. Enjoy. All right, Brian. We actually just finished a random episode of the Catch Up, and we were discussing it, and we were psyched about how deep we went into meditation and our daily lives and you becoming a parent. But we also met here today to have some other conversations about some other things that have been going on. And we were just in discussion. We were like, you know what? We're here. We've got some time. We enjoy talking to each other. Let's keep going. Let's go deeper. So this is a part 2 of the random episode with Brian Tyree.
Let's go deep.
Let's go real deep. So I wanted to start this section of the episode by saying that this month of November 2018, which you guys may be listening to down the line at some point, November 2018 was a life-changing month for me in 2 different ways. And I had briefly given Brian some insight into what that included, and some of it's represented on social media and things like that, but it's not the whole picture. So today I'm going to dive a little deeper, maybe get a little vulnerable, talk about some of these things that happened to me. And I'm really grateful that Brian, my really good buddy, is here to facilitate it and to lob me up a bit.
I'm honored to be here.
So, Brian, what do you remember about what we were talking about at the park when I was kind of preparing for this upcoming month? Because I think that was the last time we really had a hangout. So why don't you cue me up as to where you're at in the situation, and then we'll kind of go through the events.
The last thing I remember us talking about on this sort of subject was we were at the park, and it was near Halloween, and you were going to play a show with the Dark Arts.
Right.
It was coming up that weekend. And then also you're preparing for a trip to Taos.
Yeah, and that is exactly the 2 subjects that had these events in them. So I was preparing for a plant medicine ceremony, ayahuasca in particular, and we had been talking a bit about that. Brian's always been very interested in that kind of part of my life and trying it one day down the line maybe. But this time I had been talking to him a little bit about how I had felt like I had kind of plateaued a bit, like I was plateauing a bit in life and was lacking a little bit of direction. And in these experiences that I had had before, in these plant medicine ceremonies, I had felt like I had started to get a little bit used to it, like I wasn't getting the therapeutic benefits and I wasn't going as deep as I was hoping to. So it's something that I had been thinking about a lot. And so I dedicated myself to a deeper amount of preparation to be kind of primed for a more prolific experience. Like Brian had mentioned, there's an area of the United States, Taos, New Mexico, that I'm honored to be a part of that community. Anyway, I decided that with the group of friends I have that we formed a mindfulness group, we were going to do a 3-day fast leading up into that weekend. So Monday through Wednesday, I was fasted, so just nothing but water for 3 days straight. And if anybody has done a fast before, you know that they are not easy. They're not necessarily fun parts of of your life, but they also are incredibly beneficial. And coming out of it not only makes you feel amazing and does wonders to your body, but it also is like this incredible mental victory. The hardest part of doing a 3-day fast is getting over the habits of eating and recognizing your kind of daily actions. Because when we think about eating, we see like missing lunch as being a catastrophe. Like, this is terrible. Right?
Well, not only that, it almost becomes a nervous tick. Sometimes you are walking around the house and you pass by the kitchen. You go in the kitchen. What do? You open the fridge. What's in the fridge?
Mm-hmm.
Just checking in the fridge. Oh, that looks good. Maybe I'll nibble on that.
Right. So when you dedicate yourself to a fast with nothing, you realize, one, what true hunger really is versus psychosomatic hunger, which is, I think, what happens to most of us 90% of the time. We have kind of times in the day that cue us, or walking through the kitchen that cues us, or spending time with a friend that will give us this illusion of hunger.
So what is psychomatic hunger? What do you mean when you say that?
Psychosomatic?
Psychosomatic, sorry.
The idea being that you metastasize a feeling in your own brain. The idea would be you walk into the kitchen and subconsciously you drift to the fridge and you open the fridge and you see the leftovers from last night and all of a sudden you feel hungry, as opposed to you're sitting working and your body starts to tell you that you're getting low energy and that your stomach is starting to ask for food and that you're ready for a meal, right?
How long does it take you to get past that? Like you said you fasted for 3 days. Is that the longest that you
Well,
fasted?
I mean, this is more of like a daily thing. I think that everybody struggles with hunger, with
do you get
hunger
past
issues.
that, though, when you're fasting?
You're kind of dedicated. It doesn't mean it's a lot of mental victories and just realizing that, okay, well, I'm really hungry, so I guess I'll just drink more water or go for a walk or read a book or play some music or dive back into my work and choose to focus on something other than the hunger. And also by drinking a lot of fluids, you can help with that really sharp hunger pains and the low energy results, physical output that you're getting from a fast.
Do you ever faint or anything like that?
I've definitely gotten lightheaded before, but a lot of it goes into how you're preparing and what you're doing. If you're drinking a lot of water, and I do give a bit of room for lemon juice and salt, which are minimal when it comes to caloric intake, but they have huge amounts of beneficial minerals and vitamins in it, so it can help keep you properly hydrated with the right amount of electrolytes and things like that. So that can really help with a fast. And there's also a million different types of fast. Some people will only drink coffee. Not only drink coffee only, but coffee and water. They'll have coffee in the morning, which kind of helps with their appetite, gives them good energy, and they'll drink a lot of water. So that's one way to kind of slightly step down from a full water fast.
So do you fast every time before you do one of these ceremonies?
I've tried different things, but I do seem to enjoy the fast, not only because it feels like I'm cleansing my body of its kind of residuals, the things that are kind of in my intestines and in my cells, and starting to kind of refresh my digestive system. But it's also, like I said, it's a chance to really dive mentally as to why you are doing this and asking yourself. It's kind of like a stoic philosophy exercise of is this really that bad? Is this perceived scarcity as bad as I had thought it would be? As we are right now, it's my morning coffee is starting to wear off. I'm starting to feel those hunger pains, and it's well, do I need to stop this podcast and go eat, or am I going to be okay? And it's basically that type of choice for 3 days straight. And it starts to get stronger and stronger and more difficult.
You start to become primal, it sounds like.
But then you hit this point in day 3 where you start feeling ridiculously good. And not only that, but even through the process, there is this weird benefit where you start to really objectively see how you spend your time throughout the day as it pertains to eating, because depending on what your diet's whether you eat 3 meals a day or 2 meals a day or 6 meals a day, there's a lot of time in your day that you spend thinking about food, who you're going to get lunch with, preparing the food, going to the grocery store, cooking the food, eating it, cleaning up afterwards. You do that and you multiply it by the amount of times that you eat in the day, and that's a significant percentage of your time is spent making food decisions.
How is your sleep?
Not great. When I'm doing a full fast, and full disclosure, I've used cannabis before to help me sleep better. Not to say that scientifically it is beneficial for sleep. A lot of research shows that it actually kind of disrupts REM sleep, but it does definitely help me get to sleep, help me fall asleep and sleep through the night. But on fasting days, I'm not ingesting cannabis at all, as well as no food, anything like that. So I have had issues sleeping on those 3 days for sure.
So did you do this fast in preparation for this Taos trip because you had reached a certain plateau and this was to kind of help break out of that?
In part, yes. I definitely had the desire to mentally and physically go deeper than I had before in hopes of getting more return from the actual ceremony itself and the experience. And that was part of it. But also, just like we had talked about in meditation in the other episode, the more you make it a part of your routine, meditation being a daily routine, but fasting could be once a year, once a quarter, once a month, depending on how it sits with you. There's times when you feel like you need a reset. And I was feeling that way as well. I love having mutually shared challenges with close friends. And in this case, my mindfulness group, we're all ready for another fast, even though they weren't getting ready for a ceremony. And so it was great having that solidarity and that team support through the process. So it's not like just you.
How did everyone do?
You versus a bunch of gluttonous bastards. Well, interesting that you should ask, because for me, my own experience when fasting is that I have these low points and I never feel like I'm just like firing with energy. Sometimes on the last day, I'll start feeling really clean and really good. But for the majority of the experience, I'm pretty low energy. However, with that amount of saved time, I'm not spending that time in food world, right? Not eating with people, not making food or anything. So I have more time to do more things, even though I am at this lower level. It's like rather than waking up and being like 50% and then after your morning routine and your coffee going up and being to like 110% for a while, and then that fades down to like 80%, then you eat and then you have like a little spike, but then you go really low and you need to take a nap, feeling this kind of like energy graph throughout the day depending on your fuel level. That's how I kind of gauge most days. When you're fasting, it's just like an even keel, little fluctuations that sit around like 70% rather than erratic 50 to 100 to 50.
Okay, so let me paint this picture a little bit. When did you start the fast?
I started it on Monday, and the first ceremony was on that Friday, second being the day after on Saturday night.
So you fasted Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
I broke the fast on Thursday. Actually, you know what? I'm thinking in hindsight that I actually broke it on Wednesday evening because I really wanted to have a full day of eating on Thursday. Friday, the days of the ceremony, you either eat very lightly or not at all to be prepared. So I knew I had another day of kind of like semi-fasting coming. So I wanted to have a full day. Plus, I hadn't worked out very much, not seriously, during the fast. So I wanted to get a good workout in the next morning. So I decided to eat that night. And, you know, my mind was kind of justifying that technically my last meal was Sunday night. So Wednesday night would have been a full 3 days rather than waiting to Thursday morning, which would kind of been like 3.5.
Breaking back into food, I'm guessing you're not going into Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson
straight to Chick-fil-A
style cheat day, huh?
No. In fact, I don't think anybody on this planet other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson eats Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson amounts of food on his cheat day. No, I broke it with, I think I had an apple and I had some bone broth. And then about maybe an hour or two later, I had kind of like some eggs and some veggies and stuff like that and made kind of like a simple meal. That's how I broke it. But the fast was its own part of it. But what really was interesting about that week in preparation was what surrounded the fast, what I did in accompaniment to the fast, one of which was my first float tank, which I have to thank you for not only facilitating that and telling me that there's a great center that is giving good deals, and I jumped on that months ago, but then the real favor you did to me was staying on my ass and saying, dude, when are you going to use these freaking credits you bought? You know?
Yeah, because I could keep an eye on you.
Right, exactly. So Monday, the first night of the fast, I went to the center and did my first 90-minute float. And obviously, we talked about having a meditation practice, but the float tank is a kind of a different animal.
Completely.
That was its own experience.
What'd you think of it, real quick?
I think that I need to do it again. I think I need to do it a few more times because even in a sensory deprivation chamber, there's so much new surroundings and this is such a new feeling and everything is a first on your first time that it's really hard to really have sensory deprivation. I think that once you kind of understand your bearings in that setting, then it's like, okay, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to take off my clothes. I'm going to take this shower. I'm going to get in here. I'm going to make sure that you've got this order of operations now. And so it's not as new. And I think that it kind of eliminates a lot of the mental clutter that will kind of jam you up, keep you from being in the sensory deprived state that they claim.
Yeah, lack of sensory is its own sensory.
For sure. And going straight to a 90-minute session can be pretty intense for people, especially people who don't have any sort of meditation practice, right? They're not used to being still for even 10 minutes, much less 90.
Did you stay in the whole time?
I did. I think that I had to use a lot of my meditative practice in order to get through it because there were parts where I was like, I know I'm not in this completely depleted new state of consciousness that people claim and during float tank sessions. I knew that wasn't where I was. And so then it was more of just like a patience game and sitting with the thoughts and just going into my own space. So that was its own experience. That was phenomenal, but that's not the one I know you're eager to ask me about.
No, it's not. So you did that on Monday. Wednesday, you broke the fast. Thursday, you drive down to Taos.
No, Friday.
Friday, you drive down to Taos. Now, in preparation for this, is there anything else that they suggest that you kind of do to prepare for a ceremony?
Yes. So there's absolutely diet recommendations that they give. I think that there's a level of mental preparation that they can encourage, but they can't really facilitate it for you. Everybody, at least in these situations, is coming from different areas of the country or the world. So it's really difficult to be like, I want everybody to think on this and to be in this state for these next 2 weeks leading up to this. So I think that mentally you just need to see this as it's coming, and this is something that you need to work with in your own way and take it seriously, rather than seeing it as like a vacation where you're just like trying to get everything done so that you can walk out the door on Friday. You need to keep it in the forefront of your mind while you're in preparation mode, like the weeks beforehand, continuing to see that, which will also help you be more dedicated in following a bit stricter diet and a mental preparation. But to answer your question, as far as a physical preparation, mainly plant-based, limiting dairy, gluten, red meat, more of a low salt diet, obviously tons of fluids. I don't know any diet that doesn't recommend drinking plenty of water, avoiding refined carbohydrates.
Gotcha.
It's kind of basic. It's kind of like a simple whole foods pescatarian diet is kind of how I would compare it to.
Do they tell
some
you
basic soups and things like that.
What about doing other drugs? Do they tell you to kind of stay away from cannabis or something like that?
That's a good point. Yeah, actually, they recommend, at least the people that I work with, they recommend taking a break from cannabis and alcohol and also even caffeine to a certain extent.
For how long?
A week to 2 weeks in advance. I mean, when you're diving into this type of world, they're going to have differing opinions as to some people are like, just don't do stimulants, right? Don't drink caffeine ever. And I think that that's just not necessarily realistic in the modern world right now. I mean, it is, but it's my choice to drink coffee. I enjoy coffee. I think that it's good. And I also think it's good to take breaks. That was one of the reasons why a fast was really helpful for me, because it was an easier way to not only get my diet in check and get ready for an ayahuasca experience, but also to kind of recheck myself with my caffeine intake as well as my cannabis intake. Alcohol has not been as big of an issue for me ever in my life, so that's not as difficult to cut out completely, but obviously for others it could be different. So for me, it was really good to kind of just dive head in and really take that week before very seriously. The fast being kind of like the nucleus of that, and then the results around it following from the decision to fast. They also will advocate for abstinence too. There's that kind of like savoring your energy and being ready to be as primed as possible for this extremely prolific hallucinogenic experience.
So when you went down there on Friday, you're in your car, you're driving. Tell us where you did this at. I'm guessing that they don't rent out the local rec center.
No,
get this done.
And that's,
is it at someone's house, or what is the setup like?
Well, I have to first start by saying that a lot of these circles are gray area. They're not medical facilities, and they're not 100% legal. So I don't feel comfortable sharing too much detail on that,
Got it. But you're in the mountains. You're in New Mexico.
I'm outside of my normal state. I really enjoy leaving at least the city. I mean, in the early days, I was traveling. I was out in Bali, or I was in Peru, where these first ceremonies went down. But now that I'm here in Colorado, I found a place that's in New Mexico, in a more rural setting, that holds these ceremonies.
Are you doing it indoors or outdoors?
The circles are indoors. However, at least in this particular circle, like I said, it's in the mountains, so it's a very nice location, but it also doesn't have vast indoor plumbing. So if you need to go to the bathroom, there's a outhouse that is about 75 yards away from the main house. So you walk out there. So in these ceremonies, you are encouraged to stay in the circle. You've got your little setup there where you have a bucket for if you need to purge, and you've got blankets, pillows. You're kind of in the space with everyone else, so you're sharing.
You brought all these yourself?
No. I brought. Okay. I brought my sleeping pad, and my Thermarest, just for a little bit more padding. But they've got a lot of pillows and blankets, and they facilitate it extremely well. But if you've done it a few times and you know that you like to have an extra pair of socks or your favorite pillow, you bring something to kind of make it more comfortable. If that's even a possibility during these
What are you
ceremonies.
wearing clothes-wise?
Good call. So, well, before we go any deeper, I want to talk about, in the earlier episodes, there's a 2-part episode on an ayahuasca experience. It was actually a before and after with a former colleague of mine. So I encourage you to check out the Chip Baker episodes, which go into more detail into ayahuasca preparation and what all it entails and what it is. And, so this in a lot of ways is a follow-up. This is a bit more of an educated conversation that's developing on a basic knowledge of what ayahuasca is. But to get back to your question, my garments, I've kind of carefully crafted. Some people have very special robes and pants, and some people want to wear all white. That is kind of a traditional selection for these types of ceremonies. And others want to be extremely comfortable. People have like their malas, or they set up an altar by their space. Anything that makes them feel more prepared, more comfortable, and engaged in this process. Me personally, I'm all for function. Comfort and function. I don't have shoes on in the house, but I bring my sandals so it's easy to slip on and off if I need to walk outside just to go to the bathroom or get some fresh air. I wear thick socks to keep my feet warm. And then basically I have 2 layers. I have some yoga shorts on that have like a lining, so I don't have any underwear on. It's kind of like a swimsuit almost, but what it means is that it's easy to... It's not like I'm wearing a bunch of different clothes. I have 1 pair of shorts on, and then I wear some sweats over that. So you tend to go through a lot of like temperature swings and like moments of discomfort, and you'll be freezing cold and then sweating within minutes. So it's good to have things that are not only like can cater to both being cold and hot, but are also easy to get on and off. I wear a white t-shirt that kind of fits that whole wearing white, very comfortable. And then I have a Peruvian sweater that I bought in Cusco that I wore in my second and third ceremonies in Peru that I just kind of wear as a relic. That's just for tradition's sake. That's kind of what I wear on the outer layer. So sweatshirt, and underneath shorts and a t-shirt. But there's other people who have like very nice clothing on that they wear specifically for a ceremony.
So you're circling up. Everyone's getting in the circle, right? How many people are there?
I've been in ones that are as big as like 30, and I've been in ones that are smaller, like 9 or 10. This one was right around 15. Brian, I would be remiss if I didn't tee me up to ask me about the other preparation that I did that week while I was fasting. I told you about, and it blew your freaking mind. If you don't remember,
I remember it like it was yesterday. Because actually, I've been interested in doing it myself.
Let's get into it, man.
It sounds very interesting. So let me get this week straight. I mean, this is like the craziest week I've ever heard of. Not only did you fast for 3 days, you did your first sensory deprivation tank. You're then going to do an ayahuasca ceremony. And then also you did some house cleaning.
That's a very polite way to put it, yeah. I did 2 sessions of colon hydrotherapy is the technical term. What day
did you do these on?
So
Monday was sensory deprivation tank.
Tuesday was the first day of the colon hydrotherapy. Wednesday was the last day of the fast, which I actually happened to have a hot yoga music gig where I had to sit on the very end of my fast. I had to be sitting in like 100-degree room playing drums for an hour. Surprisingly, I kind of came into a new state, and I did really, really well. And I thought I might have passed out because I had no food in me and I was in this hot room, but I did okay. But then Thursday was day 2 of the colon hydrotherapy.
This is almost as crazy as Shark Week. Almost. This is getting close to Shark Week crazy.
Well, that's just for you, buddy. So
tell me about this colon therapy. Is that what you call it? Colon therapy?
Colon hydrotherapy.
Colon hydrotherapy.
And there's been different approaches to this type of therapy for longer than recorded history. I mean, you can find things going back to the ancient Egyptians and beforehand of using these types of methods for health. I think that we're only starting to learn the benefits and the connection between our minds to our gut health and what's going on inside of our digestive system. I mean, we all know that we are what we eat, although we don't always act on that. And the concepts behind colon hydrotherapy is that there's a lot of stuff that's backed up in there that has not been digested or is possibly kind of sticking onto the walls and not allowing you to properly absorb the food that you are eating. And neglect and improper gut health over your lifespan can cause serious issues whether it's cancers or different diseases. So the concept of colon hydrotherapy is to begin to flush out from the opposite direction your large and small intestines, and even getting up into some of the other digestive organs if you're going very deep into the process, in order to flush out the unwanted buildup in those areas, as well as flush out potential parasites or negative bacteria that could be developing in your gut.
Did they find a parasite?
No, there wasn't like an alien that came out or anything like that. And then introducing healthy gut flora back into your
So that's part of the
biome.
process too, or are you doing that yourself?
Well, they give a lot of recommendations as to how to reintroduce, and they also sell probiotics and mineral drinks and things like that that promote healthy guts. So I did a little bit of that during the session, but just going back to it, man, like, I'm not embarrassed by any of the situation. Otherwise, I wouldn't be spouting off about it on my own show. But I do want to share the actual experience, because you're sitting in a room in a kind of like a holistic health center. You know, this is kind of like a house turned office. And I'm sitting on a very specific bed that is pretty much built for this. It's absolutely built for this.
Let's pump the brakes a little bit.
All right.
You go into this house. Is there a waiting room? Are you the only one that they're like seeing at that time? Is there other rooms? Like, what is this?
There's 2 rooms, and then there's like a couple other like office rooms, and I think there's probably some other areas for different types of treatment. But there's 2 main rooms for this type of therapy, and they're both pretty elaborate setups. There's a good amount of plumbing, as well as a nice like bed to lay on, and there's a toilet in each room so that you can like go to the bathroom.
So do they give you like a scrub or something, or you're not wearing your normal clothes, I'm guessing?
Well, I show up in my normal clothes, and then I undressed down to just like a t-shirt, and then I laid on this bed, which is kind of similar to the shape of like a
room all by yourself,
pregnancy.
just wearing a t-shirt.
There's the doctor's assistant comes in and gives me the rundown, tells me kind of like what to do, and then I disrobe. I get up on this bed, and it's like a pregnancy bed where like you're kind of laying kind of like half on your.
Are you in stirrups?
On your back.
Are your legs?
It's not stirrups, but they are like kind of like places to put your feet that are a little bit more elevated. You know, they're not full on like metal stirrups that you know, it's not like that high up. It's more of like you're kind of sitting on your back and kind of at a mild angle.
So most of the weight is like on your back. You're kind of on your
You're just
back.
laying down. You're not, you're not having to really support yourself. You're lying down, but you're in this kind of like geared up position. Now, here's the kicker, is that in between your legs is this like trough area. It's kind of opened up, and there's a tube that is designed to go in you. And that's...
Is it lubed?
You lube it. They tell you to disrobe. They give you a little bit of lube, and they kind of tell you what to do. And so you get into the position, and you
insert it.
And then they have a sheet. You bring the sheet over your legs, so you're not just sitting there completely exposed with a tube up your butt when they come in. You've got a sheet over it, and then you press a button next to the bed that is like basically a walkie-talkie that tells them that you're ready. So then they come in, they start talking to you, and they kind of guide you through it. They offer you some body work. They kind of tell you about this process, and then they kind of start you up. So the idea is they start to push warm water into your intestines, and as that begins to fill up, your body has the same reaction to release the buildup. So now you're releasing out of...
Into the trough.
The trough is angled into a series of tubes, which is then like which is water supplied. So like it's kind of like flushing this out of the room too.
Constantly.
It's kind of like off and on. I mean, like the water may be on for like 40 minutes straight, but it's like you kind of feel it build up and get further up into like physical feelings of like your intestines starting to fill up with
going up your like abdomen
with water, and then you start feeling like you really need to go, and then you let it out again, and then you just have to continue to you have to mentally override that you are pooping on your back and not in your normal place, being like on a toilet or something like that. You have to like physically allow yourself to relax so that you can let this process happen. And as it goes, it'll start to slowly kind of flush out further and further and further up into your colon.
It comes out in peaks and valleys. It's not just a constant thing.
No, yeah, you're right. But the absolute strangest thing about this whole process of it couldn't get any stranger
Oh, yeah,
of
it's
having
not strange at all. Tell me the strange part now. I'm really interested.
The strange part about it is that there was probably like a 6-year-old woman telling me her life story about how she was a hippie on Haight-Ashbury going to see Jefferson Airplane at the Fillmore and pressing on certain areas of my body and stimulating this whole
She's pressing on your body? So she's managing
She's
the
giving
water.
me body work. She's giving me certain massages of areas of the body that are shown to help stimulate the colon and allow for like deeper crevices to be opened and things like that. So
do you tip on something like that? I'm serious.
I feel like I probably should have, and I didn't, and now maybe I'll never go back. But she's telling me her life story, and I am just like exploding. You know, like I am just like having
and it's
a very audible, very smellable experience. She was such a pro. She did not even phase. She was teaching me about the process. She was telling me about her story. We were like connecting on music. She was such a sweet lady. And probably the most professional practitioner I've ever experienced for her to be able to
peeing also?
That. No. A couple times I felt the desire to, but
Yeah.
I didn't go through with the urge just because I didn't want to like have to like bring that into the mix. There was already enough going on.
Oh my God.
So I bring this up not because I want to share a disgusting story or advocate this, although I did become a believer, but the first time I was like, wow, that was such an experience. Like I haven't felt like this cleared out ever. What an amazing experience. I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I tried that. It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. It wasn't that uncomfortable, and the benefits far outweigh the moments of embarrassment or whatever. But by recommendation of a close friend, they told me that it's about consistency. You want to do it at least 2 times, if not more, because the further you get up into your colon, the deeper this cleansing is. So like if you commit yourself to a small series of it, you can get a lot more benefit than just doing one. So I did sign up for a second one, and I went in there a little bit skeptical, thinking that I got cleaned out, right? You know, I'm clean.
I saw a lot come out.
Right. A lot came out, and I am cleansed. The second one was like 2 times more intense than the first.
When you say intense, do you mean intense by the amount that was coming out?
Exactly.
Oh my God.
And
Can
also
you see
the
what's
reaction
coming
of how I felt afterwards. Well, that's interesting you say that, because yes, you could see that. As disgusting as that sounds, it's incredibly educational as to like realizing what is actually being stored in your body. Because think about it, man. Like you've got like 3 decades of stuff that may have never come out.
Yeah, I feel like a boot would come out.
Yeah, like a Tyco race car or something. You know what I mean? Like a discontinued collector's edition.
Like grab that. That's going on eBay.
Yeah, stop that one. There's different ways to do it, but they have a clear tube that you kind of see that's kind of down, like kind of gravity fed. So when you are flushing out your byproduct, you can quickly at least see what's coming out, because you can learn a lot about like if it's mainly oil, if it's cloudy, if it's clean, if it's solid, if it's not. Especially the trained eye can learn a lot more from that. I'm just sitting there like incredibly disgusted, and the other half of me is like fascinated by this whole new realm of alternative medicine that I'm trying out. So
was it easier to go the second day?
Just like I'm sure the sensory deprivation tank will be, right?
Yeah.
It's like you kind of know the routine. You know, they don't have to tell me to do this, that, and the other. They don't have to tell me to relax, and that I have to like overcome this fear of essentially like pooping on my back with somebody else in the room. It's really, really strange, but that's the process. The second one I was amazed at like how much more came out, and also just the feeling afterwards was like, it was like one of the best days I've ever had.
So
like,
different
I was
than the
so
first
clean.
day.
I had also eaten. I had finally broken fast too, so I also had that going for me, where like I was now eating healthy foods, and I was back into having fuel in my body. So like that crossed with a second therapy session, I was like vibrating. I was on such a good energy level, great mood, everything. That was the most intense 4 days leading into what was an incredible weekend of self-discovery and a life-changing experience.
Yeah. So let's go back. So you're cleaned out, man. Not only did you...
I paid my dues.
Oh my gosh, man. This week is just insane. So, okay. Let's take you back to Taos.
First night. Yeah.
First night. You've done the sensory deprivation tank. You've fasted. You've gotten your colon cleaned. You're good to go, man. So you're in this circle. You got your yoga shorts on. You got your sweatpants. And you're circled up with around 15 people. And what happens at the beginning? Like, how do they start this?
So for those who have never tried this or are curious in any way, I mean, I got to give at least the first thing I have to say is that, this is a very serious decision. This isn't another kind of fun experiment to try out. You do this with the acknowledgement that this is a very serious experience that you're about to have. This isn't going to be fun and games. There's going to be some deep work that's going to happen. And it's also not a Western medicine. This is something that you kind of have to commit to emotionally rather than take on the whim of a doctor. So with that being said, obviously tread lightly, do your research, and commit when you decide to try something like this. Take it very seriously because it's very serious. And the more you commit to it, the more you'll get out of it, guaranteed. So with that being said, the experience, I love leaving Denver to go because it just feels like I'm like leaving the emails, the work, the stresses behind me, and I'm going off into nature. It's the same feeling of wanting to get away and go camping, just getting away from daily life in order to experience something new and different. So I get there and it's just so quiet. It's so beautiful. At nighttime, you can see every star in the sky. It's just a magical place. And immediately upon getting there, I just feel so much more at peace. It's a very musical area. This area is the community, a lot of musicians, some beautiful like instrument makers down there that come and bring interesting instruments, and they provide music throughout the night as well. So the ceremony is a small group of people. There's either one guide or maybe two guides, and usually at least one assistant. The guides are everything from what you could call a shaman to just more of a facilitator. And I've experienced ceremonies with both those types of roles. It's held after nightfall, so it's dark outside, and the ceremony starts under candlelight. Everyone sits down, everyone's there. There's a bit of kind of talking and getting people, especially if there's any newcomers, talking about the logistical side of things. The bathroom's out here. If you need to go this way, be careful with your light because the entire ceremony is held in darkness. So if you're using a flashlight and you turn it on and you blind the entire circle, that can really disrupt people's experiences.
Oh God, yeah, I can only imagine.
So there's a little bit of like the house rules, the suggestions, and then you drink the medicine. It goes one at a time, and you take a second and set your intention, and you drink usually a small cup, maybe like an ounce.
So do they come around and give that to you? Or
No,
do
you go up to the front and they talk to you for a second, and they kind of, either you can ask them to kind of pour for you, where like they kind of read you and they give you either a half cup or a quarter cup or a full cup or whatever, or you can just say like, I would like a full cup. And, you're not going up there asking for 2 or 3 cups. That's not how it goes. It's pretty much like it's a cup and then you see how you're doing. This isn't something that you can really gauge. It's not like alcohol where like 1, 2, 3 floor or whatever the hell the phrase is. You know what I mean? Like it's not, there isn't like a linear progression to this. Some people can have like a sip and have an incredibly powerful experience. Others can have 2 full cups and be very unaffected. It's different. And that same 2 cups the next day could absolutely change an individual's life. It's very mysterious as to how scientifically it affects the body, because the tolerance levels seem to not only be different between different individuals, but also in the same individual on different times in their lives or different nights.
Now, when you hit this plateau that you're talking about, did part of you think like, oh, I just need more?
Yeah, I thought that part of me was scared to go further than I had gone before. And I think that's definitely natural when you're in a state of such a different consciousness than you're used to. I think that it's human nature to tread lightly and to not be as courageous, to just keep marching into this very profound experience, because it is so strong and challenging in so many different ways. Because it's also one of the most beautiful things you can ever see. Just like any of these experiences, it's just by definition, you can't really put words to it. So I'll do my best to kind of speak in general terms, but there's so much that cannot be explained of these experiences that you just have to experience in your own way.
So let me ask a question. So this ceremony that you went to on Friday, did you pour yourself or did they pour for you?
No, they always pour for you, but you can say, I'd like a whole cup.
What did you say? What did you do this time?
I said I wanted a whole cup. I was ready to go deeper. I had talked to the guide about a month in advance, and I'm very close with her, and I had spoken with her pretty candidly about how I felt I had been plateauing, and there was issues with my diet that I didn't think I was quite being diligent enough with to facilitate the best experience in these things. And I just started talking to her, and she was the one who recommended the colon hydrotherapy as well as some more like emotional support, and told me the things that I needed to hear and also challenged me in some interesting ways to get me there. So again, just like having such a emotional connection to this circle and coming at it with the right intentions, I cannot repeat it enough how important it is to take it seriously. Because going into it with just like a carefree attitude is it's going to chew you up and spit you out.
Have you seen people getting chewed up and spit out?
Yes, straight up.
How many times have you done this now?
This was 9 and 10.
Oh my God. So can you kind of pick out like, oh man, this guy, is there any way to like help those people or be like,
see, that's
so crazy because it's a whole ceremony.
Let me take one step back to where you were queuing me up a minute ago, because I think that'll kind of answer your question. So everyone goes around in circle and they serve their first cup. Then there's about maybe 10, 15 minutes where one of the candles is still lit so people can see a little bit. And, you go to the bathroom, you kind of get your water filled up. You're getting situated. Then about 15 minutes later, they blow out the candle and now you're in pitch darkness. So it's kind of like sensory deprivation in a lot of ways. You're like hearing what's in the room, but it's pretty much silent and pitch black. You can't even see the person to your left. About anywhere from like 30 to an hour in is when the effects really start to kick in, and it depends on different people. I've historically had a slower onset than others. It seems to usually really affect me at about an hour and a half, where others seem to be between like 40 minutes and 60 minutes.
Does it kind of mess you up that other people are being affected and like,
you
get
just that
so in your zone?
No, you get that feeling of like, is this a placebo sort of thing, or like, why is this not working on me sort of attitude? It's all just internal chatter because you got nothing else to do. You're not on your phone. There's nothing else going on. So you're just kind of sitting there waiting for something to happen, right? I usually use that moment as like a very deep meditation. I focus on meditation during that kind of like quiet before the storm is kind of the attitude I'm taking. And that really is the theme of the evenings, is that there's a guide and there will be either kind of like old medicine chants that are called Icaros that come from the Quechua and the Amazonian ancient tribes that introduced this medicine. So there's like songs that come from that area of the world. But then in kind of more modern circles, they also have it opened up for more like people who want to just contribute a song. So throughout the evening, different people that are participating in the circle, whether it's the guides or the assistant or other people who are very deep in this medicine, will still contribute a song, whether it's just instrumental or sing or combination of both. So aside from the music and kind of like uncontrolled sighs or purging or laughing or crying or in some cases screaming, things like that, where it gets really serious, the circle is to be held in silence. So it's kind of like what we were talking about in the last episode, where you can't necessarily get up and walk over and put your hand on somebody's back and tell them it's going to be okay, because that may completely take them out of what they're really experiencing. So what you can do is be like, I see you, sister. I'm sending you love. If you're sitting and you're deep in this psychedelic experience with the ayahuasca and you hear somebody having a really hard time, like crying or something like that, on the other side, you can send them good energy, right? That's the extent of it. Unless things start getting very disruptive or even to a violent standpoint, which I've only experienced once, but I've also heard plenty of stories of that. And that usually comes from when people are not being true to themselves with how they prepare and what they're really bringing into that place. Like a lot of times, like people with PTSD or depression or substance abuse, addictions, things like that, it can cause for very, very turbulent experiences that in hindsight, they've been these moments that change people's lives. These moments that I'm sure people who are interested in this subject have seen or heard of stories of like psychological breakthroughs that happen throughout psychedelic experience. And now, thankfully, there's amazing people pushing the therapeutic uses of psilocybin and MDMA and things like that. But the use of psychedelics for huge breakthroughs is something that's been rumored for thousands of years, and people believe in it, and now it's actually starting to show scientific results now that it's starting to become a little bit more mainstream. So the point that I'm getting at is that you don't know what someone who's going through these terrible experiences is actually going through. So the one that comes to mind where I witnessed somebody who really lost it, and I thought that they could be possibly dangerous to themselves or something like that, when the ceremony was over, they were light as a feather. They looked like a totally different person. And from that moment on, I went back about 9 months later and got a chance to reconnect with this person that had the most intense experience I'd ever witnessed. And they said that they had completely quit the cocaine that they were addicted to. Their marriage had 180, essentially. Like, it was right back onto an amazing course where it was a huge struggle beforehand, like huge shifts to the point where you're talking about more of like potential curing of psychological issues, less than just like aiding or just like working with them, kind of slowly, incrementally working on your issues. We're talking about huge shifts in perspective that can have incredible benefits. But obviously you need to show up and be prepared to face that stuff head on. So let's take a little breather, a little bathroom break, and we'll be right back. Yo, and we're back.
Yeah, so this time in the ceremony, you drank a full cup. What happened next?
It was a 2-night ceremony, 2 individual nights, right? But they were back to back. The first night, I had the experience that I was kind of hoping for. I was absolutely floored. I went deeper than I'd ever had before. So I ended up drinking a second cup. Usually I drink either about a cup and a half up to 2 full cups. So you go around and everyone drinks at the same time. And then about an hour and a half in, they'll open it up for like, if you feel you need more, you go up and ask for more. And that goes on for about 3 or 4 hours throughout this whole ceremony. And then they'll have like a last call. And then about 45 minutes, an hour later, they'll bring the circle to a close and they'll start to light the candles again. And people will start to come back to talking with each other and to getting back into their quote unquote normal life. So
you had 1 cup and then you stayed around for a while, let everything kind of kick in, the music's going on, and then you went up for a second cup.
Yeah, exactly. And it was incredibly powerful. It was
it right after you drank the second cup, or did you go back and it still took you like a while to kick in?
Yes, it was the former. The second cup, within a few minutes, I felt much deeper. Like, so while the first cup only, you felt like I was pretty in my space and pretty in my normal Seth zone until I started feeling like a little bit around like an hour in. At about an hour and 20, hour and 30, when I drank the second cup, I was almost immediately taken to like an even deeper space. So whether that was just like the continuation of the first cup or the second cup kind of like just coming and having an onset that was much quicker. Point is that I had just an unbelievable experience of understanding and having this just crystal clear view of where my higher self was and the efforts that I'm doing, the things that we've been talking about, the discipline of the meditation and working on your relationships, working on yourself, caring for others, all these things that I work towards and how aligned they are with my higher self. And at the same time, I could also see the darkness of my ego and the self-doubt. It was so visual, these brilliant patterns of beauty and unbelievable visions that represented total unity with yourself and with the planet and the universe, and these types of feelings crossed with like these almost like cancerous visions of like these dark, blotchy, kind of like what you imagine seeing like cancer on an X-ray or on like a scan would look like in an otherwise healthy body. It was like that, but they represented areas of self-doubt and negativity in my life. Obviously, that was extremely powerful to witness it in that sort of upfront, in-your-face experience. But one of the main things that I was dealing with on the first night was that I had felt compelled to share a song. I've been wanting to sing in one of these situations for, obviously, this was my 9th time at this point. The next day would be my 10th, and I had never contributed a song. And I had been talking to people, being a musician. I was like, wow, this is so incredibly frightening to me. The idea of doing music in pitch black, can't see the fretboard, can't see your instrument, and you're singing to a completely undivided audience that are sitting there listening to what you're doing. And then you add to that you are in one of the deepest psychedelic experiences of your life. But what I've witnessed from others, as well as what they've told me, is just the music that comes out of these experiences. It's just like it takes you to a whole other realm of tapping into the music in your mind or the music in your soul.
So did you write something specifically for this, or were you like, I'm going to go up and jam?
No, I'm not. I definitely wasn't going to jam. So I had my own doubts. Like, I've played plenty of gigs, but most of the time it's with other people. it's planned. There's a game plan, and you're in a louder venue where there's people drinking and chatting, and it's kind of like not necessarily like an easier venue to play, but it's definitely something that I'm more used to because I've been doing this since I was like 20 years old or even like 18. I was playing in front of people. So this was different. This was so intimate. It was just me and my voice and my guitar. I decided to play a song that I thought would fit that situation very well. One of my favorite songs. And I had been practicing it throughout the month, just really getting into it. So I remembered all the lyrics and I could play it. I actually practiced playing it with my eyes closed because I knew it was
completely black.
Because I knew I wasn't going to be able to see the frets, so I couldn't rely on seeing the frets then. So I felt really prepared, but I was also still scared shitless. And throughout that first night, man, like I had these moments where like I was feeling so empowered by like the stuff that I was doing, and like I could see my trajectory so clear as to what I needed to do next, and it was so positive. And then I would have these moments of like self-doubt and anxiety surrounding. I would start to think like, well, he's probably going to ask me to play a song soon, so I should be like ready. And then I started like letting my analytical mind started to like try to run through the chord changes, run through the lyrics. I started letting my mind take control, and I started getting like nervous and started to like worry about if I fucked up. And then I would have this incredible vision of like a dark blotchiness that would just creep into this otherwise beautiful state and be like, why the hell are you doubting yourself so much? So that was that entire night. And I want you to know that I didn't sing. I did not sing that night. I was too overwhelmed. It was such a powerful experience. I did not sing. I just felt like I wasn't ready.
So did they try and call you up and you were just...
I think that they could read it. There's this incredibly strange intuition that happens when you're in those types of scene where you can like feel something that's going on the other side of the room, and then later it'll come up and you'll realize that your feelings were accurate. It wasn't just like a phantom sensation. There was something going on, and that is only magnified with experience and intention towards like what those feelings mean and practicing and sitting in those spaces.
So how did you feel that you didn't get up and sing?
I felt ashamed. I felt like I saw the path to a higher level of myself, and I saw how beautiful it was, and I saw all the areas that I was thriving in, and I decided to stay in my place. I didn't take the leap forward, and that was disappointing. But I also felt so overwhelmed the next day that I was very unsure as to whether or not I was going to continue on and do another one, because I had gone down there for 2 nights, and after the first night, after an experience that strong, I was like, I think I need to go home and get some rest. It told me that I was doing such good work, and like I've been working so hard on my projects right now. Like I think I should just go home, rest up, and get back to work. But I talked to the guide that day, and she really encouraged me to stick around. She thought that there was something going on with me, and like not like terrible, but she just thought that there was something that was really brewing, and that you had done all this preparation. You're here. Stay. Be courageous.
How did you feel the next day?
Like, I was exhausted. I probably got to bed around like 4 or 5, and then was up by like 9, and tried to nap throughout the day, but just really couldn't. And so,
did a lot of people stick around, or are there new people that are coming in?
A few new people. I mean, in that area, there's a lot of people who are more like locals, so they just kind of went home, took care of their business, and then came back for another night. Or maybe a few people left, could only do one, and others could only do the second. So it was a slightly different crew, but a lot of the same, and a lot of the same energy too. It's one of the big things. It's not just like whoever signed up. It's like this is a private thing, so there's usually a little bit of vetting and a little bit of like the same type of community.
Was there communication about how you didn't sing with the guy that was going to call you up and stuff like that? And
I talked a little bit to the guide, to her. It was actually her husband. It was the one who's more of like the musical director, if you will. But yeah, so it was...
so were you planning on singing the second night?
I didn't know. I thought, yes, I wanted to. I definitely wanted to. I had one of the big parts of my preparation was like, this is the time I'm going to contribute. I'm going to like kind of stop being an intern and kind of like join the tribe a bit. And to do that, I needed to take a stance. Like I needed to contribute in a real way. And so I felt that need.
So you felt the need. You're kind of exhausted, and you're getting ready for the second ceremony.
Yeah.
On Saturday. You got everything set up. You go up. Now, how much do you take this time on your first round on the second day?
I don't quite remember. I think that because I had talked to her that morning, I was like, look, you give me what you want. I trust you on this one. I don't remember exactly what she gave me. And I also remember that it didn't matter, because as soon as I went back to my chair, like I told you, like sometimes it takes me an hour and a half for me to feel it. Like as soon as I went back, my stomach started twisting, and I knew that this was going to be like something different. This was going to be a powerful night.
I'm sorry. Let me go back to the first night real quick. Did you purge the first night?
Yes. I'm not as much of a purger as some people. Some people like really let a lot out, both on the front and back ends. I'm usually like kind of like a 1, maybe 2, maybe like 2 or 3 hours in. Some people do it a lot in the beginning. And for me, it's usually like 2 to 3 hours in. I'll have like one big one or maybe like 2 in a row, and then I'll go back and I'll be okay. I kind of got like a stronger stomach for that sort of thing. But the second night, I immediately felt like it was coming on quick. Like I immediately started feeling it. And it makes sense because, you know, you would already, it's not like this substance is out of you from the night before, right? You're still physically and emotionally still in this kind of space, still in the same house and stuff like that. So
you immediately felt your stomach start to twist second night after your first cup.
I purged pretty early. Within like 45 minutes, I had already like thrown up a good amount and I was starting to feel it. But I also knew that I was not quite where so the kind of the concept, the rule of the ceremony, if you will, among of like the core rules of like always remember your breath, no matter how intense things may get, just can remember that you still have your breath. You still go inhale and exhale. Remember to surrender. The more you fight it, the more it's going to twist you around. And remember to accept what's happening and be courageous and stand in your place are 2 of the core rules when in this space. But the suggestion is that if like Brian Tyree is wondering whether or not he should take more medicine, because it's like you're in it and it's intense and you might get more intense, it might get less intense, but you're still thinking about whether or not you should have it, you should go take more, because you will know when you don't need it more. You won't be like kind of on the fence when you don't need more. You like might not even like fathom what they're saying. You may not
be of this.
It might not even be on your radar. You know what I mean? So yeah. So I decided that I was going to take a second cup when they opened it up for that. So I went up and took a second cup, and I was laying down after the second cup, and all right, this part's going to get a little interesting. So I was laying down after the second cup, and then I started to feel like I had to go to the bathroom. Like I was like, all right, I got to go to the outhouse. I stood up and went outside, which is obviously a challenge when you're in this like really deep state. But I got up and I was making my way out there. And as soon as I went outside, I was the only one out there. Everyone else was still inside. And just like the shift immediately happened where like all of a sudden, like I started getting more intense than it ever had been before. It was already more intense the night before than it had ever been before, but now it was even up leveling from there. And I immediately felt kind of like a scared animal out in the wilderness, kind of like how you feel when you're alone in the dark in the woods. You kind of like have these little sympathetic nervous responses about something else is there, you know, what's just being scared, the feeling like something's watching you or something like that. So I started having that feeling, and I let my mind be like, that's natural. You're in the woods by yourself. Just go to the bathroom. You'll be fine. I go into the restroom, into this outhouse, and it's just getting extremely intense. I'm going to the bathroom. I'm throwing up again. It's this very, very cathartic experience where it's just getting more and more intense. And I'm like, just accept this. Just telling myself the same rules that I'm trying,
and
that I've been taught.
You're getting sick and going to the bathroom.
But it's not, I'm not worried about the sickness. I know that that's natural. It's natural to throw up and to go to the bathroom while you're in this situation. I'm not worried about that. I'm just like, the feelings are getting more and more intense, and it starts feeling like I'm like almost like birthing or shedding some sort of like being. It's so intense as it's coming out of me, like the purge and everything. I'm starting to, for the first time in any of these ceremonies, I'm like uncontrollably starting to make noises. I'm starting to like moan to like low level screaming, and I'm kind of there, but I also can't really control it. It's getting incredibly intense. And so it's getting there, and I'm all alone out there, and I'm like really deep, kind of my eyes closed. I'm like sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear something. Just to let you guys know, despite how far you go into these psychedelic realms, if someone drops their flashlight on the ground over there, you hear it, and you still like react to somebody dropping a flashlight on the ground or something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like when I heard something outside of the outhouse, I heard something. It wasn't a fake or a mental sort of apparition, if you will. I heard something outside, and I was like, that didn't sound like footsteps. I thought maybe it was like a bird or animal or something like that. It wasn't really moving around. It just made a couple quick sounds, and I was like, hello? I kind of like yelled out, hoping that maybe it was somebody who was like walking around or something, going, didn't hear anything. So I'm sitting there and I don't hear anything for a while. I'm like, all right, whatever. And
You're in the bathroom.
I'm in the bathroom.
Is it only one stall, or did you think?
No, it's a good question. It's 2 rooms. So it's a outhouse, but it's nice. It's not like a really dodgy, nasty.
Did you think it was just like someone trying to come in and go to the bathroom?
I thought that was a possibility, but I thought I would have been able to hear more of like human sounding, like footsteps and twisting of door handles and, you know, all those types of things. But I just heard a couple of little things that let me know that there was like something there, but it wasn't just wind and it wasn't a human. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was an animal, but so there's also 2 rooms. So there's room on the other side. So I thought that maybe someone was getting ready to go in there. I hollered out. No one said anything. I start getting back into a really intense kind of like a session of the medicine, kind of coming back. And I say this knowing that it's going to be met with disbelief. But I hope that I've built the credibility through our friendship and also through the things that I've talked about on the podcast and shared on my website and things like that, that I'm not saying this to get a rise out of somebody or to paint some sort of picture.
I think that's pretty clear.
I lean over and I'm really, really deep into this like most intense experience I've ever had with this medicine, which is equal to the most intense experience I've ever had in my life. And all of a sudden, I felt something else in the room. And not only did I feel like the presence of something else in the room, the temperature of the room dropped 30 degrees. It wasn't a gust of wind. It was stagnant air that went from warm electric heater in the room. It was probably like 82 when I walked in because they have an electric heater and a candle. It went from that to 50 flat, and the color of the candle shifted from like an orange to like, it was like a pale blue, purplish light in the room, and the temperature dropped. And this is me opening my eyes and looking around. This isn't me like super deep and the eyes closed. Like this is a lucid experience. This isn't totally psychedelic experience, right? Yeah. I'm like, what is going on? Like I opened my eyes and I'm looking around. And I'm feeling these things. I feel something else in this room. And I start to like lean over. I start to like tremble a little bit. I'm scared, but I also am still feeling this medicine going. And I start to lean over and I have my feet on this like wooden, it's basically a wooden squatty potty. It's like a little piece of, it's a little wooden block that you put your feet up on so that you have a little bit better alignment for going to the bathroom. It's uneven. It's on a wood floor. It starts to rock. I feel some sort of energetic connection between whatever this other presence is and myself. As I lean over, I can feel it on the back of my body, on my neck, and
it made contact with you.
Not physical, but it just felt like there was like some sort of like energetic transfer going on on the back of my head, going down like my brainstem, if you will. And I start to tremble, and I'm trembling, and the block that my feet are on starts to rattle, and it gets so intense, and it's such a high vibration that it feels like the entire outhouse is like in an earthquake. It's shaking and trembling. Yeah. It was frightening because it was obviously such a new experience that I had, but it didn't feel dangerous. And I didn't feel frightened to the point where I needed to just like run away. It wasn't like a fight or flight. It was like I'm experiencing something new, something that I've never experienced before in my life.
Something intense is happening right now.
And I felt this sort of energetic transfer. I don't know how long it was like that because I was sitting there trembling, and I don't know for how long in physical minutes that happened. But what I do remember is hearing the beginnings of a few footsteps outside, the real sounds of somebody walking to go to the bathroom. And like on a dime, I feel this presence release, and I bring my head up, and the temperature immediately comes back to like the 80 degrees. The light is back to normal, and I hear somebody walk into the other side of the door, into the other room.
So like you had this trembling effect. The light is blue. The room is cold. You feel its presence on you into like your brainstem. And all this rattling is happening as if it's in an earthquake. And then you hear someone kind of step into the room and all of it dissipates.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Well, at that point, I asked if it was the assistant's name, because at that point I was like, something just happened. I kind of like was not sober, but I was sober enough to be like, that was something incredibly different and not anything that I'd experienced before ever in my life. I asked if it was another person in the circle, and she ended up getting the assistant. And after a good amount of time of talking to me, and like, I ended up coming out.
She went and got the assistant.
Right. And so then they came out, and they were like kind of like hanging out with me outside. They were outside of the outhouse, and I was still in the outhouse for I don't even know how long. And eventually I came out, and they helped me get back into the circle, and I was really, really just depleted after that. I just was like so overwhelmed by what had just happened, and I was trying to like slowly start to digest this whole thing. And so I ended up sitting on a couch outside of the circle for a while, kind of in view. So like I couldn't really see into the circle because it was pitch black, but I was in a candle lit, the foyer of the house. So they could see me. The people who were guiding the circle could see me and make sure that I'm okay. Because I was gone. Because I think I was gone for like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Oh.
Like this was not... So this wasn't like a 10-minute experience.
Did this woman come out to like find you or something like that? Was she just trying to go to the bathroom?
I think that one of the other people in the circle just went out to go to the bathroom. They heard me maybe making noise because, like I said, I was uncontrollably making some noises at the time. And then I asked for the assistant, and then the assistant came, and then the assistant went and told the guide. And then so it became known that I needed help outside, and then they ended up helping me get back inside.
Did you have like a lot of fear at this point?
Honestly, no. Well, here's the thing is I'm still so confused by like, what do you do with that? It's like trying to read the writing at the beginning of the Matrix. Obviously, it's abundance of information, but what does it mean? How you begin to translate that sort of thing. If what I'm saying is in any way true, which I mean, I know my own experience, but like objectively hearing a story like this, how do you kind of make sense of something like that? And if you believe any of it, and there was some sort of energetic transfer between myself and maybe something that's from a slightly another dimension, or maybe an extraterrestrial or spiritual an angel world, or whatever. And who's to say that any of us can speak with authority as to what that even represents? Who's to say that the gods of Egypt, the gods of the Mayans, or the Incans, the fairies of the medieval times, the aliens of the 1900s, who's to say they're not all different interpretations like that cultures have put on to very similar experiences? But we know that they keep coming up all throughout history. There's accounts of things that are similar to this, and yet we just tend to give them different labels. So like, who are we to say that like an angel would obviously be different than an extraterrestrial? Because none of us have had a real measuring stick or something like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So the one thing that came up throughout that entire night that I began to understand above anything else is that, and it makes a lot of sense as I say it, but it's something that it takes a lot for us to really comprehend, is that like we're not just human beings. We're not just this shape of existence. Because we already know from talking about meditation, or that feeling you get when your favorite band is playing your favorite song and you have this ecstatic feeling and you like are transcended into like a much higher state of ecstasy or something like that. We all know what it's like to feel outside of our normal realities. What I understood from this experience was that we're not just human beings. We're also beings of everything else. We're beings of the universe. By definition, if we're part of the earth, you know we're part of the universe. And what does that represent? Is there a chance that we have so much more inside of us, inside of like what our consciousness is, than the parameters that we have given it for what American life is in 2018, 2019? We already know that the human eye can only see this range of colors, and we only use 10 to 15% of our brain for like waking life. It's like, are we so arrogant to think that there's not other functions that we're never aware of until we enter some sort of other state of consciousness?
Yeah. What's interesting is when you kind of think about the story of like creation and kind of how we were created. You say there's Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, and we evolved, and now we're humans. And that's usually the end of the story. If you were to ask a squirrel what his story of creation would be, you'd be like, well, you know, I was a rodent, and then I evolved into a squirrel, and that's it. I'm a squirrel. But the reality of the situation is that's not where the story ends. The story doesn't end with humans being created.
And that's not where the story began either. We don't know. Yeah,
the story began in something that we have no idea about. And just because we are here and we evolved this far, as a human being, we like to think that the world is for us and that the world is around us. And we're in this state of consciousness right now. But who's to say something that, where do we stop? We are a part of this universe. And just because we're here in this consciousness right now, as a human being, that doesn't mean it's the end all to be all. Our lives are such a small blip of the history of the entire universe that when you talk to people that don't believe in evolution and things of that nature, I've never seen anything evolve in my lifetime. Yeah, of course you didn't. Yeah, you're 100 years old at the most. That is a blip of a time in the time span of the actual universe. So to think that we're going to stop evolving right now is ridiculous, I think. And that we need to start to get into more of this consciousness that you're speaking of, that we are part of the whole entire universe, and the universe is not made for us, and the world is not just made for us. We are a part of this world, and we're going to continue to evolve in certain ways, and it might be through aspects that you're talking about. And just because this isn't a normal thing that is experienced, and it's something that some people might find hard to comprehend, or you might even find even more difficult to explain, does not minimize the experience that you had. And it's something that we were talking about, that it's okay not to know. And it's okay to have an experience that's just an experience that you experienced for yourself through your own consciousness. Mm-hmm. And to not have labels. That's okay. I feel that sometimes we need to label things to understand them and to conquer them and to say that I've been there and I've done that.
Yeah.
And that there's going to be things that come up in this universe and in this world that you're not going to be able to explain.
That's kind of the beauty of the whole thing. How boring would life be if you had all the answers all the time? How boring would baseball be if everyone hit a home run every time, right? It's something that I've been thinking about a lot in reflection of this experience was, do ants know about humans? And you think about that, it's like, well, when you see an ant, when you step down and you see an ant that's like almost stepped under, that was almost underneath you and it sprints away. Yeah, that ant is now aware of your presence and is terrified, right? And is fleeing and is like, wow. But you think like right now, the anthill that's outside of your house, there's a bunch of ants in there, even considering about humans. They even think about humans. And the answer is no. They're on a totally different reality. They don't have the capacity to think about humans. Do you think that humans are so evolved that there's no chance that there's not necessarily like supreme beings, but comparable other beings that we're just not aware of? Are we that arrogant to assume that we know the answer to that question?
Exactly. I mean, I got to tell you, that story gave me goosebumps.
We had shared some of the preparation story, but I wanted to save that one for you. And I know
this is audio. My jaw was just dropped the whole entire time. I mean, that is just an insane story.
Well, look, man, we recorded 2 podcasts today. We have had
quite
a marathon. Sooner, we will soon, because I know I premised this that there was a second event that has been very life-changing in this month, but I feel like that is a lot to bite into on this episode. So I want to leave you with like the one thing that I have pulled away from that experience in regards to being part of a universal being, not just a human being, or not just like, a human being that's in Denver that has a job or whatever, however you want to label yourself. What I pulled from that experience is that we have more of an obligation to our highest energetic self than we even comprehend. I think that it's more than just good for us to be good energy. I think that it is kind of like our cosmic value, our currency is to be of as high vibration as you possibly can, which means loving each other, pursuing what you believe in, standing up for what you believe in. These are the types of feelings that I came from this experience. And if what happened to me is complete chemical falsities, however you want to believe it, if that was just completely a made up story that either I made up to sound cool or was completely just that deep in some sort of weird substance that I imagined that happened, if the end result of that entire experience is that I want to be a much better person than I was before, then what is the fucking problem with it? Brian, I love you, buddy.
Love you too. I'm so glad you shared that with me, man. I feel like I was there. It's that powerful of a story that it transcends. I really appreciate you sharing that with me. That was fantastic.
Yeah, brother. More to come on that. More personal interviews with, I wouldn't even call them interviews, but more personal conversations with Brian. Like I said earlier in some of these shows, like I love bringing new guests and awesome individuals to the show and spreading this community that is just phenomenal and doing great things. But I also really enjoy having a chance to have a conversation with a close friend and talk about some of the things that have been in my world recently. So Brian, thanks so much for your time, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for listening to the MindMill Podcast. If you loved this episode, check out some of the other MindMill episodes. They're all free and available at themindmill.com, as well as all major podcasting platforms. Also, please take a moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It's incredibly easy and really is the best way to support the show. Stay tuned for more MindMill episodes coming down the line. I'll keep them interesting for you, I promise. Take it easy.